Welcome back, Realty Pros. Thank you all again for another, being dedicated to another week of Realty Talk. We're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right in. And we have Mr. Porter and Curtis who are going to be sharing with us today. And the topic of today's Realty Talk is reasons to buy a home. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to have them to go ahead and take over from here. Thank you again, Mr. Porter and Curtis, for being willing to share with us in today's Realty Talk.
Thank you, Ms. Anita. I'm glad to have you all here again. So we're going to continue in our series where we've been talking about home buyers expos, home buyers seminars, home buyers in general. And one of the things that I really wanted us to go over today, and I'm going to ask Ms. Anita to just share, if she can, one slide from the Home Buyers Expo slides, and that's the slide that says reasons to buy a home. So Ms. Anita, if you can share that screen for us, that'll be great.
Let me find it really quick.
Okay. If you need me to send it to you, I think I have it, but yeah. So in the meantime, guys, and I'm glad to have Curtis with me, because Curtis and I have done this a number of times over many years, and we always develop really good kind of stories and anecdotals to go over with our clients. So you can use these anecdotals, and I like to do it from the standpoint of the buyer's consultations, because it then translates very easily to if you're doing a buyer's expo, because you can use some of those stories, some of those same stories and same anecdotals. But what I found is that a number of people, and when I listen to buyers agents doing this particular slide for buyers, I've noticed that a number of times they might struggle with certain bullets that are on there. So we wanted to make sure that we went over that today. Ms. Anita, are you having a hard time finding it? Because if so, I think I can pull it up real quick and share from my device. I don't want to hold this up. All right, great. So we're going to get that slide up, guys. So in the Home Buyers Expo, and Curtis, you can just chime in anytime you want as we talk. We went over last week when we had Mike Cooper. You heard Curtis go over a couple of things, and a couple of those slides are really, really important to articulate to your buyer when you're going through the home buying process, or even if you're doing a home buying expo with your client. And so Curtis, in our first meeting, he went through kind of like the walkthrough of what the home buying process is, everything from top to bottom. You can go ahead and illuminate all of those keys, because I think this is one of the ones where you have to keep tapping it. There you go. So thank you. So this slide in particular is one of my favorite slides, and if done very well, I really think it gives you a whole lot of talking points, a whole lot of ammunition when working with buyers. If you don't know some of the information, however, it tends to throw you for a loop. And I've seen people kind of miss a lot of really good selling points. And the most important thing is, you all know, my main thing is that we're trying to explain all of the features, advantages, and benefits of home ownership and or mortgages and we're comparing and contrasting that to renting. Okay, and in some cases it's renting, in other cases when people are already homeowners or been homeowners for a while, some of this information is just information they've never heard before. So it's always good to make sure that we articulate all of the information that I'm going to share with you today. And I want to make sure that you all can ask me questions in how I'm using the verbiage to articulate concepts that you want to share that these bullets are teaching or should be teaching your client. Number one thing we want to do is overcome the fears and uncertainties and doubts. Okay, some of these slides are meant to help buyers overcome fears, uncertainties, and doubts. And what is the biggest fear that buyers have? Well, it's not getting a house. It's not going through the process. If anybody want to chime in and tell me what's the biggest fear that they have? Anybody?
Probably the money.
Easy question. It's the money.
The money.
It's always the money. So what this slide does, it gives you an opportunity to kind of hold that fear. And I think I shared this and I trained Curtis really well on this. You got to get them. You got to put that fear in their face. You got to kind of hold it in their face and say, you're going to write the biggest checks you ever wrote before in your life. And there's ways to do that so that you kind of giving them that aha moment that they want, because they know it's going to cost money. But then at the same time, you're going to give them ways to look at this investment, this homeownership investment. And it's all done on this one slide. And if you do it really well, it just takes all of the sting out of it. Curtis, you have something you want to share about this?
Yeah, and what I wanted to kind of bring to everyone's attention is really, like, when Shay goes through this, it's to really pay attention to the second, third, fourth, and fifth bullet. Those bullets, the way that he does it, it wraps it all together in one kind of story, or one, I don't want to say a scripted message, but he can tie them all together instead of a 1, 2, 3, 4. It just flows together. He just does an amazing job with wrapping it all together. So I just wanted to point out the second, third, fourth, and fifth. It's kind of the way Shay will do it. It puts it in a nice package.
So it's kind of difficult. Funny enough, it's kind of difficult for me when I do this, and I have to kind of just teach it. It's a lot easier when it's a dialogue between me and the buyer, or if it's a question and answer between me, and if I'm doing an expo and the people who are sitting in the audience. It's really a lot easier when that dialogue, when they have that exchange, because I can say, oh, did you know? And what did you know about this? So I'm going to try to do that today. And I'm going to just ask you guys to, if you have any questions whatsoever, to stop me. I hear a lot of background noise. I don't know who that is, Anika, but could you mute them for me? Because that's throwing me off a little bit. But thank you. So, I'm going to try to go through them. But what I would like, let's see who's on the call. Who wants to be a brave soul to be my, who wants to be the agent? Anybody want to volunteer to, not to be the agent, but to be the buyer? And I'll be the buyer's agent. Any brave soul out there? If not, I'm gonna call on somebody. I don't need that slide. I need the other one. Go back.
We have some volunteers in here.
Okay. I just need somebody, because we want to make sure the background is not too loud. Okay. But maybe is Curtis still? Yeah, it might be better for Curtis to do it because I can really hear his audio clearly. So I want to make sure that we kind of do
I'm
this
back.
Okay, Curtis. So why don't you, Curtis, are you in a place where you can be the buyer?
Yeah.
Or no? Okay, good. All right. So generally what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is when you're going through the other slides, and they're all like introductory slides. And I really go through those slides rather quickly because my main meat and potatoes is to get to this slide first. Once I get to this slide, we're going to start to really deal with, and I'm going to start pulling from the client what their fears, uncertainties, and doubts are. I want to hear what their expectations and hopes are. I want to hear all of these things. So, you know, when you get over here, all of the bullets on the left-hand side are invisible. And the first thing it says is reasons to buy a home. And so I'm generally talking and saying, Porterhouse is this, and we're going to do that, and this wonderful company XYZ. But before I go any further, and then I get to this slide, and it says reasons to buy a home. Why do you want to buy a house? Tell me the reason why you all want to buy a house. And then generally they say what, Kurt, or whatever. You could be the buyer.
Yeah. Well, I just want to have more room and get out of my apartment. With COVID,
Okay.
I didn't have the room and space I needed, and I have kids learning from school, learning from home, and I want a bigger space.
All right. So just me hearing that now, I'm doing some thinking. I heard apartment, so I'm assuming he's paying the rent. I heard space, so I'm going to make sure I talk about home ownership and the freedom and space and all of these things. I'm hearing children. I'm going to talk about the future, and I'm going to talk about growth. I'm hearing him talk. I'm listening to the client, and I'm starting to put my perspective. How am I going to use these bullets in order to address his concerns or to inspire him in some of the things? So I might say to him, so Curtis, you live in an apartment right now, right?
Yes, I do.
And two-bedroom apartment. And how much do you pay in rent?
About $1,700.
$1,700, and it's a two-bedroom. Where's that located?
I'm over in Jessup, Maryland.
Okay, all right. Do you like living in that particular area, or are you looking to relocate?
Yeah, I would like to relocate, kind of get into an area with better schools.
Okay, and so you're just excited about being a homeowner. What does home ownership mean to you?
Well, I would like to cut my grass, so I'd like to have some grass to cut, and be able to do my own little home improvements or paint if I want to, and I can't really do that in my apartment.
Okay, well, that's wonderful, Curtis. You're just like every other person that I sit down with when it's time to buy a home. We all say the same thing, no matter who it is. The number one reason, if you want to just kind of sum it up, is quality of life. So that's what you're looking for. It sounds to me like we're looking for a way to improve the quality of our life, because I can imagine that renting is just, a tough thing to do. You have a landlord, you can't do things the way you want to do them. You have your kids, you have to be concerned about their safety, things like that. Is that some of the concerns that I'm hearing you articulate?
Yeah, I would like to just be the landlord of my own domain instead of having a landlord that I'm paying rent to, paying money to. I'd like to own my own property.
That's awesome. One of the other things that I really like to point out, because when we sit down with our buyers, we not only want to just talk about, the process that you're going to go through. We're going to go through that today. We're going to find out what you're looking for. But I kind of like to give you a well-rounded picture of everything that can happen throughout the buying process. And just to let you know a lot of the things as your real estate expert that I like to share, just to educate my buyers, that I know that no other real estate agent is talking about, no other real estate agent is explaining. Because one of the biggest things I want to share with you is that if you want to change the quality of your life, you're going to have to do some things that you probably never done before. And one of those things, I know you write a $1,700 check every month for your rent, but you might have to end up writing checks that are 100 times more than that, 10 times more than that. So instead of a $1,700 check, you might be writing a $17,000 check. And I know that's quite daunting to many people, but it's an investment in yourself. And it's really nothing to worry about. It's just one of the things that all of us who are now homeowners have to do. We have to get over that fear. But I want to help you kind of understand why this investment is so important, why you want to get into home ownership. I'm going to talk to you about the differences between a mortgage and a rent. But one of the things I really love to talk to people about is this thing that we call the tax deductibility of mortgage interest and property taxes. Have you ever heard about that?
I've heard of property tax, but I'm not sure really how it would apply,
Okay. So when I talk about tax deductibility of the mortgage interest and the property tax, that's the first lesson I want to teach every single person I sit down with. The mortgage is made of 4 things. And I want you to write these down or put them in your phone if you can, all right? We remember them in real estate as PITI, P-I-T-I. So the first one is principal. Just write that down for me. The next one is interest. The third one is taxes. And then the last one is insurance. And those 4 things are what makes a mortgage payment. All right. So when you pay rent, they just renting it up out of your bank account. You're never going to see it again. When you pay mortgage, though, you're not just paying the person who you owe. You're paying the principal, which is the person you owe. You're paying that bank back the money that you borrowed from them, and that's the amount. So if you borrow $400,000, the $400,000, that's the principal. That's the main part of it. The second part is the interest. Okay, the interest is how much are they charging you to borrow their money for the next 30 years. Okay, so it can be 5%, 6%, 7%, something like that. Okay, so that's generally how much you're paying them to borrow their money. The third thing is taxes. Taxes is something that we have from now to the day we die. Okay, that's something that we can't do anything about. But when you have a mortgage, it's being paid for you on that property. All right, so you might get a tax bill from the county saying, hey, this is your tax bill after 6 months or so. But you don't pay that because that's already being paid through you paying your mortgage. So once you write that one mortgage check, it's coming out of that. So the principal is coming out, the interest is coming out, and the taxes. And the final thing is insurance, because we want to make sure that we have insurance on the property. God forbid something happens to the home, an act of God, that insurance protects not only you and your family, but it also protects the bank in terms of it, insuring, having an asset that they have in conjunction with you insured. So the insurance is also taken out of that one check every month. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, so I don't have to write 4 different checks. I just write the one check and then all those things are taken care of, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And that's the wonderful thing. That's a big difference between a rent check and a mortgage check. Now, let me ask you a question, Mr. Price. How much at the end of the tax year do you get back from your rental office, or do they allow you to write off of your rent?
I get absolutely nothing
Okay.
back.
So let me ask you a question. What does the rent buy you? I mean, you paying rent. What are you actually getting for your rent?
I guess the space to live in for 30 days. I guess for 30 days.
So that's one of my jokes. Curtis knows my joke. He took my punchline. so generally what I say is really all the rent is doing is buying you 30 more days. And so if you don't pay that rent, pretty soon you're going to get a notice on your door. And after that, the sheriff is going to come and they're going to set your stuff outside and you're going to have to come see me anyway. With a mortgage though, the thing that I was trying to get to about the tax deductibility of the mortgage interest and the taxes is this. There are 2 things inside of that mortgage that we talked about, the interest and the taxes. Those 2 things are tax deductible. That means that at the end of the year, you can actually write them off. Many mortgage companies are good at sending you an end of the year statement, and it tells you how much interest you paid and what taxes they paid for you. And those 2 things are tax deductible. And roughly in most mortgages for about the first 15 years of your mortgage, 80% of the payment that you're making every month is going to pay the interest and it's going to pay the taxes. And the reason why it's so much is because, hey, if you borrow money from me and I'm going to be able to charge you interest on whatever is left in the bank account in terms of principal, I don't want the principal to decrease. I want to get all my money up front. So because the mortgage company gets to decide where that money goes, they hold on to a large portion of the money that you owe them, that interest amount that you're paying them back for borrowing their money. They hold on to that. And so your principal is quite small. You'll notice that as you make your payments, your balance doesn't go down as quickly as you think it would, making a large payment, because the majority of that is going towards interest and then towards taxes, very little bit towards insurance and a little bit towards principal. But the great thing is that at the end of the year, and I just like to use $1,000. Let's say you weren't paying $1,700. Let's just use $1,000 as a rental payment versus a mortgage payment. So you make those 12 payments every month. That's $12,000 at the end of the year, right, Curtis?
Yes.
Correct.
Tracking.
With the tax deductibility of mortgage interest and mortgage interest and taxes says that if you make that same $1,000 and they split that $1,000 up into those 4 pots, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and 80% of it goes towards interest and taxes, that means you have the ability to write off about $9,600 a year out of that $12,000 that you paid. If you can write that off and you didn't owe any taxes at the end of the year, you know what Uncle Sam is going to do with that $9,600?
What's that?
He's going to give it back to you.
Oh, I'll take it.
Now, what would you do with $9,600 if you had it in your pocket right now and you owned a home? What would you do with it?
Probably leave the country.
Why would you leave the country? Leave that beautiful home that we just worked so hard to get you? You mean you were going on vacation?
Go on vacation. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you was trying to leave the house, but no, you would go. Okay, you go on vacation. Okay. Well, here's the thing. You can think about it multiple ways, but what I like to say to my clients that, I told you you're gonna have to write these huge checks that you never wrote before. And some of my clients are concerned, like, okay, this is a new thing. I'm gonna have to make this big monthly payment. How am I going to do that? Well, here's one of the ways that I kind of help them subside that fear is that I let them know that, hey, if all things being equal, you get to write off this money at the end of the year. That's less that you owe in taxes, which means there's more money that you can repurpose back into your mortgage. So if you wanted to, and you wanted to get that principal balance down, you could take that $9,600 and then add it to or deduct it from the principal. You could just send that entire check back over to the mortgage company and say, please add it to the principal.
Wow. Yeah.
When you reduce that principal, that's going to mean you'll be paying less interest the next year, because guess what? You're paying on a lesser amount in terms of principal. Not much, but every little bit counts, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Another thing that you could possibly do is, if you have your account set up like I have mine set up, is that I have a special account that's just for my mortgage. I'll put that whole $9,600 back into my mortgage account. And then I would let the mortgage company continue to pay them from that mortgage account, or let them make draws so that I don't even have to think about it. And if you think about it, that means the first 9 months or the next 9 months are already paid for.
Oh, wow.
And then in month number 10, I'm going to add $400. I'm going to make $1,000 payment in month 11 and another $1,000 payment in month 12. And then I'm going to do it all over again. Can you do that with your rent?
No.
Another thing, let me ask you a question. Does your landlord allow you to make half payments?
No. I could get in trouble. So no, I need to pay it all up front.
They want it all before the 5th of the month. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And the reason why is that a lot of times your landlord might have a mortgage on their house, which means they have to pay by the 15th of the month. That's another difference. Rent is normally due on the 5th of the month, and that allows the landlords to collect rent and then they can make their payment by the 15th of the month because mortgages are generally not due until the 15th of the month. So that gives you a little bit more time right there. Another thing, the reason why I asked you is, did your landlord allow you to do split payments, is because a lot of the banks right now with mortgages are actually they're actually rewarding you, or actually allowing you to make split payments. What does that mean? So if you owe that $1,000, instead of having to make life decisions for the first part of the month, do I get gas? Do I feed the kids? Can they go on the field trip? You can split that payment up into 2 easy payments, and you can make one payment at the beginning of the month, one payment closer to the end of the month. And they're so wonderful, they even allow you to choose the 2 dates as long as you make those 2 payments within that same month.
Oh,
How does
wow.
that sound? Isn't that
So you
great?
can actually choose. That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what's really, really exciting about doing the split payments, is that by doing the split payments, you reduce your mortgage in terms of the years from 30 years down to 23 years. You knock about 7 years off your mortgage just by making half payments.
Wow. Why is that?
Does that make sense? Or you want me to do the math?
No, it makes sense.
So here, guys, is where you got to kind of know how that works. So essentially, Curtis, let me ask you a question. How many months are there in a year?
There's 12.
12 months. Great. So that means you make 12 months, you make 12 payments, correct?
Yes.
Well, if you're making split payments, you got to do the math a little bit different. So there's 52 weeks in the year. And because you're making by payments, so that's going to end up being 26 payments, 26 separate half payments, which equals 13. If you keep dividing 26 and a half, that equals 13 payments. So you actually make one extra payment every year just by doing half payments.
Wow.
Does that make sense? So 52 divided in half, and then that's 26. You divide that in half, that equals 13 payments. So instead of 12 payments, you're making 13 payments, but they're easy payments.
Mm-hmm.
You're making them every other week or every 2 weeks, or even the 5th of the month and the 17th, however it's convenient for you, as long as those 2 payments are within that 30-day time frame. That's what makes mortgages wonderful. The other thing that I really like to talk about, and there's so many other things that I could talk to you about, ways that you can, play with your mortgage to make it easy for you. The other thing is that was really great is that mortgage companies generally, if you can contact them and say, hey, I'm struggling with my mortgage, or I don't have it this month, they'll put the payment on the back of your mortgage. So instead of you making a payment now, they'll just store it on the back of the 30 years and allow you to skip that month so that you can get your finances together so you can move forward. Do your landlord allow you to do that?
No.
Yeah, we got to get you a new landlord. We got to get you to be your own landlord. Yeah, we got to get you to be your own
There
landlord.
you go.
The other thing is the wonderful thing. Now, I'm going to stop right there, guys, because I really wanted to see if there's any questions about that tax deductibility of mortgage interest and property taxes. And I'm sorry, I'm struggling over my words today, but go ahead. Does anybody have any questions? This is just unusual. I got both of my earpieces and I never did it like this before. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. You can see somebody's moving their screen around. Go back to the slide, please. Thank you. All right. No questions? So everybody knows how to do that slide. Are there any questions in the chat? We're good. All right. So when we see the buyer's consultations, I want to see that part done exquisitely. All right. Great. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure we were able to share this with you guys. All right. So that's that first couple of bullets with the tax deductibility of mortgage interest and insurance. Tax deductibility of mortgage interest and the insurance, right? Then we want to go to the appreciation potential. And I generally say, a wonderful thing about mortgages is that they generally appreciate in value over time. Or homes, I'm sorry, not mortgages, but homes generally appreciate over time. Unlike a nice car, you drive a nice car off the lot, Mr. Price, and what's going to happen as soon as you drive it off the lot?
It's going to lose its value.
It's going to start to depreciate in value. And then I like to tell a story. So what's some of the stories we tell, Curtis? The National Harbor.
National Harbor. Yep.
Yeah.
Where
so the national,
if you bought, go.
No,
if you bought property, back when they first started National Harbor, you might have paid around $400,000 for the townhouse or property. Now that same property is going for around $900,000. So that $500,000 is a huge appreciation value.
Correct.
And then it rolls right into, go ahead.
Yeah, you can use any of those anecdotals to just kind of get your client to understand what the whole point of you talking about the appreciation potential of property. So we often say, Curtis, what we say, there's an old saying that says, don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and just
buy real estate and wait.
So we want to make sure that we take advantage of this opportunity for us to get a real estate because interest rates are increasing. Property values generally tend to increase, but over history, I mean, you can talk to your grandparents, and I like to say my grandparents, they bought a house back in the day, and it cost them an arm and a leg. It was $12,000. That was big money back then. That same house is worth $750,000 today. So we like to talk about that. The other thing we like to talk about is the deferred gain and capital gains treatment. And this is when I generally ask people, I say, are you married? And they'll say yes or no. And I say, well, if they say no, then I'll joke around and say, we got to get you married. It's a business decision. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there's a thing called a deferred gain and capital gains treatment, which is on your primary mortgage, which means that if you sell your property and that property has appreciated in value, depending on the amount, if you're single and it appreciates in value up to $250,000, Uncle Sam doesn't get a penny of it. If you're married, however, and it appreciates in value, you can get up to $500,000 tax-free. How does that sound, Mr. Curtis?
Sounds amazing.
That's called the once-in-a-lifetime exclusion on your primary residence. But you can do it again if you get a second primary residence. Yeah. All right. The other thing is the principal accumulation. Remember I said if you get that $9,600 check, you can always make payments to principal. When you make payments to principal, you amortize your mortgage. And that word literally means kill your mortgage. All right. Mort meaning death. So you're killing that mortgage. You want to amortize it. So if you ever get any extra money besides the $9,600, you can put it in there. You can throw it on the principal. You always want to make sure that you don't just make an extra payment per se. You want to put it on the principal to reduce the principal amount. And there's a whole lot of things and strategies that I can teach you after you get your home that can help you reduce the principal amount so that you're paying less interest over time and that you're amortizing or getting rid of that mortgage as quickly as possible. Remember, we talked about the landlord. The good thing is that you have no landlord when you own your own home. Okay, you can paint, you can knock down walls, you can do anything you want. Now, if you go outside, you might have a homeowners association and they're kind of like the outside landlord. Then they'll say, hey, you got to get a permit for put up a fence or, you want to do some decorative stuff. They want to just make sure that they're protecting the home value, not just of you, but of everybody out there, because you don't want people to walk, and there's nothing wrong with pink doors if that's what you're into, but it might bring down the value of your property and the properties around it if people don't like the color of the door. So homeowners associations are kind of those type of people that make sure the grass, everybody cuts their grass, make sure you take care of your. We just want to have it so that when people come in the neighborhood to look at other people's homes who might be selling, that we don't bring the value down because we're not taking care of our properties. But other than that, you have no landlord. You are the landlord, okay? And here's the real cost of renting. I gave you, you said you pay $1,700. I knocked your mortgage, I knocked your rent down to $1,000. But if your rent was only $700 per month with a 6% rental increase per year, in 10 years, you've already bought a house. You paid $110,000. You bought yourself a nice condo.
Wow.
But at the end of that 10 years, that landlord can still evict you. Or he can sell that property outright, and the new landlord can come in and say, hey, we need you to go find somewhere else to live because we want to renovate these places. So those are the bullets, guys. Those are the bullets. That's how I go over them. And then generally what happens is people really feel a lot better about the experience. They feel a lot better about the mortgage experience. So then when I go on through the next slide, and you can go to the next slide if you want, guys, it's really after that, they're asking me questions. They're ready to start, the home buying process, the fears, uncertainties, and doubts that they had about spending. And I don't say spending, I say investing the money. Investing in themselves, it all goes away right there. But if I still have it, then I use my big bag of money analogy, all right? And that's my, you guys may have heard me say it because people don't realize now, you go into this slide, I say, you found a realtor you can trust, that's me. We obtained a financial pre-qualification or pre-approval through, and I like to say my lender's name, so I'll say Mike Cooper, okay? Now, let me tell you about that pre-approval, because you came in here and you were like, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna have to write some checks and maybe I'm gonna do this thing, I don't know where I'm gonna get this money from. Well, let me tell you what that pre-approval, I don't call it a pre-approval, I call it the golden ticket. And the reason why I call it a golden ticket is because the lender that I've worked with over time, he's closed almost every deal that he's ever given me. And so it's a golden ticket in that piece of paper represents that amount of money. So he gave you a $400,000 pre-approval, and you only have to bring in, let's say if you had to bring in or $20,000. Let's say if you had to bring $20,000 or $30,000 in. You might be like, well, where am I gonna get $30,000 from? And that's because you're thinking about it the wrong way. Let me help you think about it. If I called you, Mr. Price, and said, hey, Mr. Price, Mike Cooper just dropped off $380,000 to my office. He told me when you bring the other $20,000 to give you the whole thing so you can go get your house. What time are you gonna be at my office?
As quickly as I can.
Exactly. So that's how you have to do that in order to get people out of the mindset that this is not a thing the time is not of the essence. You want to make sure that they know, listen, not only is this time of the essence, this represents a real asset, a real piece of leverage that you're going to get. And what I call leverage is you get a whole lot of something for a little bit of nothing. And that little bit of nothing that you got to go out and bring to the table is nothing for me to ever hear you complain about. I like to not say that part, but I'm saying it to you guys as realty pros, that I don't want to hear my buyers fearful. I don't want them to be worried that, hey, I got to come up with $20,000. They know they got to come up with $20,000, $30,000. They know. We've already talked about it, right? So I'm saying this and I'm dropping these heavy numbers because I want them to get over it. I want them to, know that there's a way and that all of us as homeowners have figured it out. And I think we're all really grateful that we took the path of home ownership, and that we're in a different place in our life. So I want to sell that part to them as well. And then I'll say, we have this wonderful thing in Porterhouse, it's called 1031. I'll tell them about that. But I always point out the upfront money. And the reason why I do that is, again, I want to get all of the fears, uncertainties, and doubts out of the way. I want to disclose, okay? Now, there are some monies that you're going to have to invest in yourself upfront, okay? The earnest money deposit is usually between 1% and 2% of the loan. You don't have to go into the math unless you want to. The inspection, now we got to change those numbers. I think inspections are a little bit more now. So we used to be $300 or $400, maybe now $500 or $600. The appraisal fee is now probably $600 or more. And then we have a brokerage fee that's $795. Okay, those are upfront monies, and they're all non-refundable in that they all go towards things that you have to do for your home, things that you need to do, people that we need to take care of as we go through this process. So once we start this momentum, just be ready to have that money up front. Any questions? Mr. Price, you have any questions?
No, I just want to point out too to everybody that the previous slide and then this slide is worth its weight in gold. This is the whole transaction. This is the buying of the house. So, I always tell folks, print this out, read over it in your spare time. The analogies that Shay was just giving us, write it on the paper, read the stuff over. And what's going to start happening is that it's going to make you a lot more comfortable and confident when you're talking to people. Just bump into somebody. Hey, I'm interested in buying a house. Oh, okay. You can start to pull from these 2 slides alone, and you're going to become or really sound and feel like an expert agent. So, these slides are very, very powerful, guys. So I can't express it enough. I still learn things even now. It's just always good to hear, professional like Shay go over it, because it's just going to reinforce, what you're going to be doing out in the street. That now it's like real time. You're at a function, you're at a baseball game or something, and you start talking real estate. This is the process. This is how someone's going to buy a house. And the more comfortable, the more familiar you get with this slide, the more confident you're going to be, and the better agent you're going to become.
Very good. And so again, these slides are both designed to give them a complete overview. And I dare say, and we've had a lot of transactions go different ways with people. People are people, right? You can't do anything except try to manage as much of their expectations as possible. But if you do not do these slides very well, I can almost guarantee you that something's going to happen down the road, and they're going to say, I never knew that. And then they're going to get cold feet, and they're going to disappear. And Curtis, we've been through this a number of times when we failed to do a really good home buying presentation with our clients. And it's almost avoidable. Because when you do this well, when you set up the expectation of the 10-3-1, I want you to select 10 homes, narrow it down to 3. And I want you to promise me that we're going to write an offer on the best one of those 3. See, that's what I say. I say it directly. I say it to the point. I say it clearly. And I say the reason why we do that is because I can get you out of a contract if that needs to happen, but I can't get you in it once you realize that all the other homes that you thought were coming are not coming, and you want that old home that we didn't write an offer on. So let's write the offer. I'd rather write the offer and get us into the contract, okay, and then move along that paradigm than for you to try to get a house that's no longer available that you wish you would have jumped on because we delayed. And then I also tell them the reason why we do the 10-3-1 and I want them to write an offer is because when I set up their search, that's going to be the big ball of wax. What that mean? What I mean by that is generally when you set up a search, your client is new to the whole market. So the MLS is going to send them all of the properties that are on the market and those that just might popped up today that fit the criteria that they're looking for, right? And so they have the biggest ball of wax at that point. If they don't select from that big ball of wax, what happens after that is that they have a trickle. Now you might have a house here and a house there. And if you see a really nice house, everybody scrambling to get that house. There's going to be a bidding war, and the chances that we are going to be able to capitalize on it, we're going to start to minimize our chances because you only have the pre-approval that you have. Okay, you only have the finances that you have. All right, so I want you to look at that big ball of wax, narrow it down to 10. And then you and your wife, or if it's just you, just get it down to 3 that you really absolutely love, that no matter what, we're going to write an offer on one of those 3. And I really keep saying this over and over because I'm trying to put an image in their mind of this is how we need to do business. This is how we get you from where you are to where you need to be, which is in that house. We got to keep focusing and keep focusing. And the money is going to have to be ready. You're going to have to be ready to write those checks. I don't want a whole bunch of arguments. When I call you, I need the money now. I'm telling you up front, I'm going to need that money because I can't seal the deal if you don't have the money. All right. When the inspector, when it's time for the inspection, it's going to happen so quickly. Ratification. I'm going to need earnest money deposit. I'm going to need that brokerage fee up front. Those are the first 2 checks you're going to write. When it comes to 3 days later, we're going to be doing an inspection. Then the appraisal is going to come about 15 days after that. Then you're done with your upfront money. Now you need to get ready for settlement. Go ahead, Curtis.
And all of this really manages the expectation so that when these things start to happen, because they are going to happen, there's no shock. There's no, well, what do you mean a home inspection is going to be $500? Well, I didn't know I was going to have to pay for an appraisal. By doing this out the gate, you're managing that expectation. That now, when remember, we're under contract, we're ratified, which means we got some things we got to really knock out immediately. You know, very time sensitive. So I always let my buyers know, like, we can look, we're going to find you your home, but once we're under contract, we got to move. We got time sensitive things that need to come in to manage that expectation so that now we are under contract. They're ready. They know they need to get that EMD in. They know they need to get the admin fee in. They know that immediately we're going to set up that home inspection, that these things are going to happen. And what I've had happen over the years is I always use the analogy of, keep a big red folder, or, you have a thumb drive with all of your tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements, because they're going to keep asking you for the same documents over and over, which is going to feel annoying, but it's actually a good thing because it means we're getting closer to you getting the keys in your hand for your new house. And I've had actual clients that, as that's happening, they thought of me telling them, make sure you keep it all together. They're going to keep asking you. And they'd even told me, like, wow, as I had to provide my Cooper with this document again, I thought about you. You told me that this was going to happen. And it meant I was going to get the house. I'm getting closer. And sure enough, so it's really just managing a stressful thing for some folks so that when these things pop up, there's no shock. There's no, which can make somebody, that fear, tighten up. Well, what's this? Like, no, I remember I told you about it, 3 weeks ago when we were at a buyer consultation, and then you just keep reminding them about it. So it just takes the fear out, takes the surprise out.
And that's really good, Curtis. I think we run out of time, but I just want to also say that I've never had anybody freak out when I talked about the upfront money. I've never had anybody freak out when I talked about the 1031. If anything, it gives them the image that I'm an expert. I know what I'm talking about, and this is the way things have to happen. It's a roadmap. It's a plan. It's a map from point A to point Z. And this is how we're going to get there. And these are all of the steps that I have to try to manage. And I want to make sure that you know what your role is. And that's what you're telling them. And this is what you said you want to do, and this is what we're going to get done. But I want to give you some expectations up front. And then when they start to ask, well, how much am I going to have to bring in terms of closing costs? I can talk about closing costs. Well, part of your closing costs is, side A and side B. I talk about side A and side B. Side A is your down payment. Side B is your other closing costs and fees. Much of that money is right here. So when you put that earnest money deposit down, that's the first part of the side A money. That's the first part of your down payment. okay? Then all the other fees that are associated with closing, those will be disclosed to you prior to closing. And not only will the lender make sure, but the underwriter, and I tell them what the underwriter is and all of that. We've been through that. Mike Cooper elaborate on that more when you talk to him. But I say the underwriter, everybody's going to verify that you do have the assets that you need in order to close this house, no matter where they're pulling it from. That's really not my forte. That's not for me to find out that you have that money. My job is to get you into this house. My job is to write you the best contract that I possibly can and save you as much money as I possibly can throughout this process. Now, that being said, guys, it's 1:30. Do you guys have any questions about anything that we shared? We really wanted to make sure that that reason to buy slide is solidified in your mind, that you take notes on it, that you listen to this training over and over again, because we really want you to be able to go through those things, because they really eliminate the fears, uncertainties, and doubts of mortgages and the home buying process in general, so that when you get to the next few slides, it's really all downhill from there. All right? So that's the way that this is set up for you guys. That's the way we've been doing it for a number of years. We've been tremendously successful. But I know, and I can tell every time I talk to a client that start to get cold feet, I can tell that you didn't do a buyer's consultation with them. And if you did do one, you didn't do this one. And that's okay. You can do, we give you the formulas, guys. We're going to give you, Porterhouse, we're going to give you all of the formulas that we know work. And sometimes people say, well, I don't have to do all of that. That's fine. Do it your way. If it works your way, great, go for it. But what we know is that this has been tested over time, and that it's really good to deal with the buyer psychology. It helps to eliminate those fears, uncertainties, and doubts so that you can be successful. It doesn't eliminate all of them. People are still going to be afraid to spend money, even after you sit down and tell them all of this. But I dare say, if you work so hard to find a lead, to groom that lead, to get that person pre-approved, to get them ready to come to the table, it really is worth your time to spend about 90 minutes to 2 hours going over these slides as thoroughly as you possibly can, asking them questions, eliminate all of their fears before you get out in the field and get down the road, and then it's time to come up with the money, and they start to get cold feet on you. It is the most gut-wrenching thing in the world when you do not do a buyer's consultation. It is easy to do. It's the opportunity where you get to control the game, you get to manage the expectations, you get to set them up for success. If you fail to do this, and you fail to do it well, it's almost 100% sure that something that could have been tackled in the buyer's consultation is going to come up, and it's going to cause your client to walk away from the table, walk away from the transaction, tell you to get their earnest money deposit back, even though they're defaulting. And then we're all in this situation where we could have easily remedied most of their concerns just by doing this very well. So again, if you have any questions, this is the time to shoot them. I would love to hear your questions, feedbacks, concerns. If you have questions about why we do it this way versus that way, please, this is your time. I really want to answer your questions. Thank you, Curtis.
My pleasure.
Anybody?
Mr. Porter, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, sir. Hey, Tom.
Okay. How you doing? Listen, I just want to say something very, very quickly, and I hope it'll help people. When I first heard you do the presentation, the buyer's consultation, rather, and I don't think I've ever told you this, I thought he doesn't know what he's doing. I said, now, why in the world would he tell people about the money, and why would he tell them that you got to write these big checks? Oh, I was so scared when I said, these people are going to get up here and walk out. But the thing that worked so well was this. One of the things that Mr. Porter understands is that people are already afraid, but you can't be afraid as the agent. You have to know that they want you to tell them, okay, I'm afraid of this. Tell me it's going to be all right. And what he does is he explains to you, even though you're going to be writing these big checks, he explains why. He also explains that relatively, you're really getting back more money, because he explains what you get for being a homeowner. than you'll ever be putting out. And when people started seeing that, I could see in their face and in their body language and their talk, how they start saying, yeah, that makes sense. And the money did not become a concern anymore. The money, as a matter of fact, they were trying to give him money before they even left the room. So the fact that he understood and he made it where he wasn't afraid. You can be afraid, but I'm not afraid because I've been through this. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to get you through this. And even though it's more money than you've ever written checks for before, he was not afraid. And that because of the fact that he gave them the information up front, because of the fact that he handled their expectations and did all of those things, when the people left, they were like, okay, well, when what's next? When you want me to bring some more money? When you want me to do this? Because they were so excited about hearing about how their house is going to appraise and value and how they're going to be able to make more money on their taxes and all of those things that really made sense. The fact of me having to write these checks meant nothing to them hardly anymore. Oh, they still knew they had to do it, but they were so excited about the final process that the getting to that final process wasn't the burden anymore. It was, hey, how fast can we do this? So I just want to let people know, because as a real estate agent, if you're afraid and you're afraid of telling this and you're saying, yeah, it's a lot of money, I don't know how people do. If you're saying all that, then they're going to be afraid. But if you're the expert and you know that hey, we've done this before, we can get you there as well, it's not going to be a problem. So I just wanted to say that because that's what I saw when I first saw him do it.
Thank you, Caroline. And I, it's funny because I can recall, I love training people. I like sitting in the room with you, especially on your first time you're doing a buyer's consultation. I like to do it with you or do it for you. And I remember when I was sitting with Caroline, it was almost like those people were like a setup, Caroline. I'll be honest with you, because we had so much fun just having a conversation. They were like, wow. And then, they were excited about it. That, like Caroline said, they were like, well, do we give you the $795 now? I said, sure. You can do that. And that's really wonderful. And that can happen. In many cases, I'll say, and all I'm getting from you up front is $795. You should say thank you. And I think I said that in that room, Caroline, if I recall correctly. I said, you should say thank you. And I think they said thank you. And they ended up giving us a check that day. So it's not really your confidence. Well, it is your confidence. That's why we wanted to go over it. It's really your confidence. That's what Caroline is articulating. It's really your confidence in the process. And then once you can make these things happen and you go through this process a number of times, it's almost like second hat. You just do it. I'm not even really thinking about, I'm not even concerned if they don't have the money. Why are you sitting in front of me? You want to buy a house, you're going to spend some money. You're not buying a car. We're buying some, and I say things like that to people. I shock them. Look, we're not buying a house. I mean, we're not buying a car, we're buying a house. We're buying a thing where you can put your car in, okay? So you're going to write a check bigger than the car that you want to drive, okay? You're going to be able to put your car in there and all your other stuff go in there. You can live in there, have family in there. So you need to go ahead and invest in yourself. And we just move on. So I get it, and I'm kind of that way with people. Now, you got to use your own personality, of course. But the most important thing is to be confident. You're not making this stuff up. This stuff really works, okay? And there are people that are thriving and living and doing it every day. And I'm fortunate enough to be one of those people. And I want all of my agents to be fortunate enough to be those people. So if you haven't bought a house yet, you need to call me. I'll be your agent. I'll get you pre-approved. I'm gonna walk you through the process. We're gonna get you a house. Any other questions? Thank you, Caroline, for sharing. Comments, concerns?
Well, I will say, Mr. Porter, that was fantastic. Just the way that you illuminated everything. I hope that everybody on the line today was listening, and you'll go back and you'll replay this, because this is what you need in order to convince buyers. As salespersons, that's what all of your licenses say. you're selling buyers on a process that is in their best interest, that's good for them. Everything that Mr. Porter articulated today is a tremendous benefit to the buyer. I love how you talked about it's an investment. And we know that buyers, even if they're not yet homeowners, everybody loves the thought of real estate investing, and just taking them from a mindset of being fearful, like Kermon said, of purchasing a home, to the mindset of a real estate investor, because that's what they're doing. They're investing in themselves. And Shay talked about all of those things that I want to encourage you guys. Use these slides, use this information to sell the buyer on the reasons to buy a home. Just remember that you are keeping them motivated and encouraged. So embrace this process. Like Kermon said, don't be fearful. As a real estate professional, you can't be fearful and cause them to move forward in confidence. You got to be confident in this. So kudos to you guys.
Sure.
And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, we're going to turn it back over to Ms. Anitha. Ms. Anitha, you can close us out.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Porter. And thank you guys again for all of your insight. And I won't go through that again. Ms. Porter already said that, but thank you all again for sharing with us. And so we're going to go ahead. We're a little bit over. We're going to go ahead. We're going to close. But before we close, I wanted to make sure that we recognize and acknowledge one of our new agents to the family, and that's Ronald Singleton. So welcome you. Welcome. Hopefully, I'm sure.
Hey,
Absolutely.
welcome aboard.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome, Ronald.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
And then also wanted to share with you all, or remind you all, that we are having our new agent training this evening. So, and that is the title of it, New Agent Training. However, I always want to encourage all of our Realty pros to join us, because although you may not necessarily be new in real estate, you can learn something new in our new agent training. So want to encourage everybody to join us again this evening at 7. It's hybrid. So we'll be in the office as well as having it available on Zoom. If there is nothing else, no other questions or concerns, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to stop the recording.